Hey, welcome to Simply Worldbuilding. Today we're going to be continuing the saga of the turtle. We broke down a little bit more of the specifics on what to do with how it affects the world around it a little bit more, certain things to do with the internals, and we're probably going to continue to go on that, but we thought it would be neat if we actually broke down a proper Dungeons and Dragons race for this group of people, because they are going to be unique enough, I think, to kind of have their own section.
Totally. Yeah, so if you're writing a book, for instance, then you don't need to worry about specifically the numbers and stats, but they are definitely something to keep in mind just because these are ways that they differ from, say, for instance, humans. Mm-hmm. If you're playing a game like D&D or another TTRPG, mm-hmm. Then this is a straight up like stat sheet, and we were talking about it, and it won't necessarily be like specifically balance checked, but we're gonna keep it definitely to the template of races that already exist in the game. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to use it in your game, by all means, you can have this. Mm-hmm. You can play with this if you'd like, but if you're a player and not a dungeon master, I don't know why you're watching this. This is probably for dungeon masters mostly, this channel.
Yeah.
But just run it by your DM, because everybody has different ideas for what fits the balance of their game better than others, mm-hmm. and maybe they don't have a place for this. That's all right. But if you want to use it in your world, in your game, have at it.
Yeah. Kind of another thing, yeah, we're going to be using D&D as a template for this. It's what we're the most familiar with. Apologies, any sort of Pathfinder fans or anything adjacent. This is, yeah, more just a fun exercise to expand on something we're a little bit more familiar with, but it's not going to fit into every tabletop thing. But it'll hopefully break down for you a little bit of an idea on how to make a custom race yourself. Also, another thing that probably should be mentioned is we also understand that D&D's format for 5e is going to be changing really soon. For how they handle races, classes, and all of that other stuff. That stuff's all getting changed. So we're making it based on like what's right now and not the newly released stuff. But again, this will hopefully kind of give you a cool frame of reference.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have the player's handbook pulled up here so that we can kind of reference it a little bit and just like what sort of traits and things that are supposed to be mentioned. Yeah. But this stuff's probably all going to be changed for the future of 5e in general, so just also keep that in mind as well.
And then also keep in mind we're keeping the book off screen so that we have plausible deniability in case of trademark related issues.
But yeah, we are going to be making this in a D&D format. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. One thing we should probably establish off the bat, we did come up with a name for the turtle previously.
Yeah. So we had pitched a couple of different ideas, but I think the one that stuck out to me and mm-hmm. probably you as well, because we mm-hmm. talked about really liking apostrophes, was Kres'aa, mm-hmm. K-R-E-S apostrophe A-A. Mm-hmm. And so that would be basically the turtle, mm-hmm. the continent that they're on. And also in a way sort of like their deity slash
country,
yeah, exactly. Talk about patriotism, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of makes it really easy to say that a likely name for the people itself mm-hmm. is Kres, K-R-E-S. Mm-hmm. The people of Kres'aa, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we may decide that we want to change that before the end of this video, but that was kind of the immediate snap judgment.
Yeah, from now on, unless we decide otherwise, that's how we're going to be referring to these places. So we needed to kind of define the terms so that you all understand and so that we can also keep up with ourselves. But with that all out of the way, let's jump right into it. So, visually, at least to establish first, mm-hmm. there was a few traits we had about the crest that we wanted to definitely be in there. What firstly was sort of this grayish blue skin that we were sort of picturing them have. So that's definitely a necessary trait that we'll have to include. We were also thinking they were going to be bigger than regular people.
Definitely. How much bigger, I don't know if we necessarily decided, mm-hmm. but I was kind of picturing that like an average crest would probably be give or take like basically at the peak of where like humans would be. So like 7 feet, probably pretty normal. Mm-hmm. And the tallest is maybe like pushing 10, mm-hmm. but I don't think that any above that is really normal. Like I think probably like 7-8 feet. And there would be some shorter ones which are like, you know, down to like 6 and 5 maybe even. But the give or take the average is like
they
7
like
feet.
all people are going to have variation for sure. But yeah, I think the average probably for the dudes are probably going to be like 7 to 8 feet is probably where their sort of 6 feet 180 centimeters sort of average is going to be. And then probably like 6 to 7 for the ladies and such. Like that's probably going to be about the range, but as always, like
you've modify it as you need to fit your character, your world. But that's kind of the give or take the average.
You have your variation. I had a 7'10" dragonborn at one point, which was hilarious. PTSD on your part. But okay, so those were kind of, I think, the main traits that were going to be overarching as well. I mean, do we want to do anything sort of visually, like facial wise as well? Do they want to have like sort of like black, sort of like fishier eyes?
I was thinking about it. What if like a little bit flatter, a little bit wider nose? Not necessarily very flat and very wide, but a little bit flatter, just like a little wider. I was thinking about the eyes as well and thinking maybe it's not necessarily that they're like specifically fish-like, but maybe they have almost like that sort of secondary lens that like some like reptiles and stuff have.
Okay, yeah, that could be kind of interesting. But they still have like pretty human-like eyes, you think?
Yeah, maybe. Did you think that the like fish style?
I was picturing kind of like a shark has, where it's like mostly black. But I was also like, I think it would be interesting to have sort of a halfway point where it's just like their pupils are sort of larger, but they still have like pretty prominent irises like humans do as well. But that was kind of spitballing. That wasn't anything we sort of super established.
We can do them both.
Larger pupils would lead to that would let more light into their eyes. And I know they're sort of a semi-aquatic people, but I do still picture them like they're on land.
They're more land-based than they are water-based.
Yeah, exactly. They just have this sort of semi-amphibious nature. And so like making them too fish-like probably kills it for me, but maybe having like they do have sort of that like layer over their eyes where they can keep their eyes open in the water.
Totally,
we can probably go with that. That would like add a level of differentiation between like just like how they look facially. So okay, we can go with that. Let's go with that.
And I couldn't tell you exactly why, but for some reason I wanted to modify like their face shape and like jaw. And my immediate judgment was like maybe like a shorter jaw.
Okay.
But did you have any like facial?
I don't know why. Like just the one I'm picturing like as the baseline, I kind of pictured their head like a little bit longer. But again, I think that's just kind of gonna vary from one to one. So like it might be more generalization than we necessarily need, because they are still like they are still a humanoid race, and so you don't want to change them up too much either. So I think for the most part the other variations are gonna just be person to person. But it gives them a few other sort of things that distinguish them as well. So that should sort of work. So I think that sort of establishes at least visually sort of what we want them to look like if you're sort of creating one. So just going off the top of the list here, if you're going into traits, there's the ability score increase. Well, what do you think on this one? I kind of have an idea, but
I kind of have an idea as well. I think that being like notoriously sturdy, strong, but also kind of like nature reliant people, there's definitely like a direction to take them. And I think that if I had to choose one thing that across the board, like not reliant on like different sub races, we were talking about the different kinds of like directions that they can go. I think the one across the board is maybe Constitution.
I was gonna say that as well. Just the stuff we've been talking about like this whole time is like hardness of skin and sort of sturdiness of skin, as well as like they are literally larger and stuff like that. And so I think Constitution's probably the best way to go with that whole thing. So we'll probably just rock a +2 to Constitution on that.
Definitely, that's their base one.
So I'm just gonna +2. Here's one we have an opinion about. age.
Yeah, so in vanilla Dungeons & Dragons, for example, and then also a lot of different intellectual properties that I won't name, there's the idea that certain races live 1 billion trillion years old.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, elves living 800 gajillion years or
Yeah.
whatever. Man, that sucks.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that so much.
It's so hard to have, like, a functioning timeline and history and forgotten history.
Yeah.
And, like, it's so hard to have that kind of depth where you scroll down the block and there's some dude who's 80,000 years old. Like, how do you have a functioning historical timeline and secrets when any given person could just have existed for the last, like, multiple millennia? Like, it's crazy.
There is ways for you to make it work. It's just, it feels like it would have more of an effect on the world than it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it does in, like, vanilla Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. Like, the thing that really, like, you're right. It's like, how are you supposed to have, like, these sort of ancient magics that no one understands when someone was fucking there?
Yeah.
So that's definitely one part of it. The other part that really bothers me, another part that really bothers me, and this is there's memes about this as well. Like, you'll find them, it's just the fact that it's like level 1 character at 500 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's odd. And okay, so there's ways you can kind of just be like, whatever. It's like, well, if you live in a village for 500 years and then you go out and start adventuring, like, you're gonna learn new things. So it's like, okay, there's ways to justify that.
Yeah.
But thirdly, the thing that bothers me the most is probably going to be the fact that a elf is going to be considered young at 200 years old, but they will have seen so much shit, matured so much, and just experienced so much more than a 50-year-old human man. And that dissonance and between those characters is odd to me. It really bothers me, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive very well.
Yeah.
The way I have it in my game is I've limited it very much. Like, say a human can live up to around 100 years. I've basically just doubled a human's lifespan for an elf, so they live a long time. Like, there is still that aspect of, like, watching someone age faster than you, and also just, like, this sort of purity of elves that allows them to age more gracefully. But it's not this sort of, like, 10 to 20 different generations of human going like, they just see you as a pet, and so I don't see how that can jive very well for me.
Yeah,
for me it doesn't work that way.
It's very jarring going from one to the other so radically like that. And so I do definitely personally think as well that it's best to reel it back at least somewhat. Because, I mean, in this book that we've got right in front of us, vanilla, we're talking they don't even get their adult name until 100 years old, and routinely live to be 750. That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot.
That's a long time. Like, keep in mind how far humanity has come in the last 750 years. Like, it's just so much to have happened. And so for races to kind of interact with each other in a way that's not, like, groundbreaking just doesn't feel possible to me in that. There's instances where it totally works out. Like, I've seen Freerun. The whole thing in that show, like, no real spoilers, but elves live, like, they basically don't age. But it's also acknowledged in the show very, very hard. Like, it's like the world is almost based around that as a concept. And elves are so rare that they don't really have a freaking society that's going to be completely based on that. Like, to find another one's hard to find. And so when that happens, it's not as jarring to anyone else it's not surprising that this elf person knows a ton of history because they were there, because you don't encounter people like that super frequently.
But if you're gonna have something be very, 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 very old, leave it, in my opinion, to, you know, fae beings of a different plane, a different realm.
Yeah.
Or dragons or something like that, but not like the humanoid races, the playable races, the NPC races.
Yeah.
But anyway, age rant done.
Yeah. And another thing.
If I had to say, give or take what the life expectancy for a Kres'aa would be, like 50% maybe more than a human.
Yeah.
Because they're sturdy, they live a fantastic, like, healthy life.
They also live in like these sort of longer cycles than humans do, which I feel like just kind of gives the idea that they are going to experience these cycles more.
Yeah.
So you'd probably see them at 120, maybe 150.
Yeah.
But I feel like that is going like their 120 to 150s are like 100 to 120. Like the area in between 1 to 120 is like virtually non-existent. But yeah, I do like the idea of them living a little bit longer purely because like again, like kind of their whole thing is this nectar and its healing and strengthening properties. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So increasing their age I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Alignment.
Alignment's another hot topic.
Yeah.
We'll leave that one alone, I think.
We could that could be more than one episode worth. So yeah, we're gonna kind of skip over that one. Play it however you want. Yeah, it is the thing. You can make it anyone feel or do anything. It's D&D. Have fun with it. Size. We kind of already touched on this one.
Yeah, definitely. We already mentioned that one. You're gonna be still like a medium size in the case of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. You're still gonna be medium size, the same as most of the other races. I think all vanilla races. But regardless, medium in size, give or take on average 7 to 8 feet, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're gonna kind of be peering over your peers. Yeah. You're not gonna change in your size classification. Yeah. Speed. I mean, since they're a little taller, should they be a little faster?
Yeah, I was considering possibly giving them an extra like 5 feet.
Yeah.
Just because they are gonna have like naturally longer strides.
Yeah.
I think that it's also. Now we'll leave that to actually a subclass thing. I think that it's maybe worth giving them an extra 5 feet.
Okay. Let's put the 5 feet on there for now, for sure.
A tentative 35 feet. 5 feet more than regular speed.
I mean, I feel like if you're gonna make dwarves like
slower,
even though they're kind of shorter, they're not that much shorter though. Like I feel like it kind of has the same justification. So let's go with that for now. But now we're starting to stretch into like the senses more specific things. Dark vision?
Nah.
Yeah.
I think that dark vision is overinflated.
Yeah.
And even though I could see it making sense for the Kres'aa, I would rather focus the like flavor and specific things in a more unique direction than tossing on dark vision like every other class has.
Yeah.
Race has.
Yeah. That is kind of the thing about dark vision is it feels like it should be something that's rare and it's just not. Like most D&D classes, or at least base classes, seem to have dark vision. Even in some areas you can kind of justify it, but I feel like the way dark vision works is it feels like it should be almost a supernatural thing, or at the very least like you have to have very good eyes. The idea that you have slightly better vision than humans means you have dark vision kind of doesn't jive with me.
Exactly.
So yeah, the only thing I could think is like, okay, well, they might dive deep into the ocean, but like we were saying, like we think these people are going to be pretty well like semi-amphibious, but not from the water. The only justification that changes them other than like outside of a regular human is like they might dive deep, maybe, but I mean, it's okay to not be able to see. Yeah. Like, so yeah, we're gonna rock no dark vision, surprisingly enough.
Yeah. One thing I had considered, we're going to get into a little bit of more of the specific like subclasses. Do you think that it's wise to say that in general they're gonna have things like better ability to hold their breath? Do we think that that is more of like reserved for the fisher like class? Because we had talked about having expanded lungs and stuff like that.
I think that is a good question. Is like how much of the amphibious nature do we want to is default, or do we want to attribute to the subclass, yeah, it is a good question. As far as I remember, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think when it comes down to swimming speed or climbing speed or things like that, most of the time it's just half your regular movement. And some things can find ways to be unimpeded by that. What if, we're kind of dipping our toes into the subclass a little bit early, but what if the regular class wasn't impeded by water travel? They could travel at the regular speed, and then the aquatic one even has a slight increase to that.
Yeah.
That fact brings me to maybe bringing them back to the 30 feet mark, though. Because if they're going to have also a 30-foot swimming speed, but then we increase a subclasses to 40, 45 maybe, it just... If we make their swimming speed 40 and their regular speed's 35, it doesn't feel like that big of a jump.
Yeah.
But if we go from 30 to 40, now that feels more impactful.
No, I'm happy. Okay, retconning.
Okay.
30 feet. By default.
3-0. That's so many feet.
More feet than I got.
That's more feet than I have in my freezer. Yeah, so we're going to go, okay, going back to 30 feet, and then, yeah, so that'll be a trait we touch on when we go into subclasses.
So
but
by default, all of the Kres'aa are going to have an easier time traveling in water.
Yeah.
And just as mostly a little flavor thing, we have committed to sort of like a secondary, like see-through lens over their eyes, so that they're, you know, less bothered by things like salty water getting in their eyes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, fair. Should that have like an actual like status effect, maybe?
I don't really think so. I think that's kind of like the up to the DM flavor type thing, where like maybe in a specific circumstance they're like, but because you're a Kres'aa and you have the thing, then they can do that up to their
we could
discretion.
just make that resistance to blindness.
I feel like a lot of blindness comes from different
Sources.
That I don't think a completely transparent lens would help with.
Fair enough. Okay, we can keep it at that then. I have a habit of just trying to add function to things that don't necessarily need them.
Well, it's exciting. It's fun to do.
Yeah, exactly. So you just want to staple it onto
trying to keep
anything.
it relatively balanced.
Okay. So what other sort of unique aspects do we want to add to these guys?
How do you feel about being like resistant to poison? Or resistant to cold?
That's kind of a good question. I think resistance to poison's a pretty common thing, although that's more of an enemy problem. At least that's just something I've heard, is that like way too many enemies are resistant to poison. But this is a playable race, though. That does give them. I think that's kind of the same thing that dwarves have.
Right.
I think they have resistance to poison, but
how do you feel about like a resistance to cold?
I was gonna say I might want to go with a resistance to cold, because firstly, we know these guys are gonna be swimming in cold water. It's not merely warm water they're gonna be swimming in.
They're fully diving in and around Arctic water on the regular,
and
they
probably semi-deep,
thicker hide to like a fish or a turtle or whatever, to sort of help to negate the effect of cold water.
Yeah, okay, so let's add like a resistance to cold in with that sort of, with their unique sort of traits.
That sounds like a solid, reasonable bonus to give to any race.
Okay.
A lot of things get 5-6 small little boosts. I feel like a nice little resistance is
not the worst thing.
Is a valid thing. It's not overpowered in my opinion, but ask your DM if you're allowed to play this.
Yeah, exactly. And as per literally anything Dungeons and Dragons related, you are completely free to modify as you see fit.
Absolutely.
I feel like I want one more little thing though.
Okay.
Maybe to do with, let's say, proficiencies or like like specific skill checks or something like that. I want to maybe give them some sort of advantage or bonus in some sort of certain thing.
Immediately my mind jumps to something to do with the fact that they're like, very inclined to be like resourceful and nature friendly, because they have very limited resource, very limited space, and they also revere the ground that they, stand on, or at least come from.
Okay.
And so nature kind of feels right to me, but also I know that that's something that kind of gets chucked in with a lot of different like classes as well.
Good point.
Like druids and rangers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, maybe advantage on like nature checks to do with water and aquatic things, maybe?
I hesitate to put too many eggs in the water basket, because I don't want it to only be valid in water type situations.
Fair enough. Yeah, a few things have that sort of problem, but also at the same time, like, these are an isolated people who will visit the land very rarely, and so it still feels appropriate to add something to the water basket or something like that. But
all right, so after brief discussion, we've decided that a good, in general, default thing for the entire race is a proficiency in probably like nature and survival.
Do we need to do both though, or should we just do one? Because I think we kind of got two things that are pretty okay right now. So if we add
that's true enough.
survival and then the subclass stuff that adds to, or subrace stuff that adds to, it'll probably be plenty, I think.
Okay, I think maybe then that survival is better.
Yeah,
of the two, like for them specifically.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay.
Well, because like there's the idea of nature like kind of fits, but
what
it does from they're also limited most of their life to a singular environment, and so I feel like they're not going to be super wise in the ways of nature outside of their environment, because their environment's unique. It's kind of like they're going to be like Australia, where they kind of have developed a very unique biodiversity because of where they live.
Yeah, but I think that because of their sort of like adaptability and inclination to make do with their surroundings, because their surroundings kind of tend to change depending on like where they're at in their cycle, that they're maybe more inclined to survival.
And and also like their limited amount of resources that they kind of have to work with. So yeah, let's go with you gain proficiency in survival.
Sounds good.
Totally. Okay.
Do you want to start dipping into subclass?
Yeah, totally. Cool. Definitely good idea. Where should we start?
Let's start with the like fisher,
the semi-aquatic,
the consuming nectar brand.
Okay.
We had talked about how they're going to be more aquatic, and therefore they're going to be able to have things like they can hold their breath for longer.
Okay.
They're going to have increased movement in the water because they're going to have slightly more webbed hands and feet. So as far as like aesthetics go, these ones are probably going to be, apart from having like distinctly more webbed hands and feet, they may take on different hues that are a little bit more watercolored. Maybe like deeper blues, maybe like tinges of green. And I think that they should have an increased swim speed.
Yes.
Do you want to go 40?
I think 40 is good, because like there's also there's ways to increase that. And already considering that like most people's base is 15, 40 is a lot. Yeah. So
it's plenty.
That's definitely plenty, I think.
Sounds good.
So yeah, they're quick boys in the water.
Yeah, and I think that rather than making it specifically water based, I think that just the increased lung capacity should be its kind of own ability in itself. So like I believe it's your standard breath holding is 1 minute. And then, based on your Constitution modifier, it goes up by 1 minute. So if you had a modifier of +2, then it would be 3 minutes of breath holding, I think is how that works.
Okay.
So what do you say that they get 50% more or double the time that you can hold your breath?
Yeah, I hesitate to double it, but I also feel like 50% is going to be some weird math.
It's weird math.
Yeah, and you're going to have to say rounding up or down.
It only comes in handy in very niche circumstances, so I think that in those circumstances being able to actually truly stand out is cool.
Fair enough, yeah, so that kind of makes it safe to double, because it's like, how often is it really going to come in handy? It is very specific. I would not necessarily aquatic based, but like there's not a lot of circumstances outside that, and even aquatic ones are going to be niche. Yeah. So okay, let's say you get.
I don't think it's unreasonable.
So whatever your breath holding amount is, it's just going to be twice that amount in minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, totally. Let's go with that.
Okay.
Okay, so they got increased swim speed, and they got more
extra breath holding capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. They got dem lungs, bro.
And we had considered as well the potential to give each of these subclasses access to some level of simple spells, just like inherently.
Yeah, totally.
Is that something that you want to do? Give them each like a themed sub-racial spell?
Yeah, might not be a bad idea. Oh, I had another idea in my head, but I'm not really sure. Because you're right. Like, as much as you want to make it aquatic, you also want to avoid making it too niche.
Totally.
So that's kind of a...
And I think that, like, personally, I think that inherently they're going to be slightly magical just because of being sort of born of an already inherently slightly magical creature, like one of these leviathans, as well as just the level of being intertwined with this like magical nectar thing is potentially going to give them some level of inherent magical essence.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah, we could do that. And then when we get to the mystical ones, we can maybe do, instead of like 2 things in a spell, we can do 2 spells in a thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, what do you think in spell wise?
Well, my mind immediately goes to something just simple and like not overpowered, something like, you know, control water / shape water, like one of those water themed low level spells.
Yeah, that's not a cantrip, is it?
I don't believe that either of them are. I think that I forget if it's control water is level 1 and shape water is another. I think the create and destroy water is lower. Tell me in the comments. But I kind of think that one of those, like just low tier but water based.
Shape water is a cantrip.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So, yeah, we could do that.
Access to the shape water cantrip.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a few decent little things we could throw on there.
Yeah. And then also, it seems like a lot of the sub races typically get an additional +1.
Fair enough. I worry that might be too much on top. Nah, a lot of that stuff's pretty situational for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can definitely keep that up. What do you think? Probably Dex, you think?
I think that dexterity makes sense for these guys.
Yeah,
Totally.
okay. Yeah, let's go with that. So they have inherently their +2 to con, and then they have the extra to Dex.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that. That feels pretty well rounded. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay.
Cool.
Moving on. Who's next?
Mountain lads.
Mountain lads. All right.
The scaled folk.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. That's a good idea. Let's, what should we do for them, sub-race wise?
Pretty quickly it makes sense to give them their +1 to strength.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of their thing.
Yeah.
They already have the constitution bonus, but now let's give them +1 to strength as well.
Yeah, totally. Good idea.
As far as access to do you want to keep it down to cantrips?
I think that's probably fair. I can't think of a lot of stuff that gives you access to like leveled spells.
No, for like Tiefling I think is maybe the only one with their Hellish Rebuke.
Yeah.
So let's keep it spells.
Let's try and keep it cantrip.
Or sorry,
maybe
cantrips. Yeah.
Maybe with the magical ones, maybe.
Totally.
We're on the spiny boys right now. So
what feels like a cantrip that makes sense with these lads?
Stone Skin is pretty.
I want to say Stone Skin is a spell.
Right. No, good point. Is there Bark Skin? Is there like a more
rare
version of that?
But I think that like Bark Skin is maybe level 1 and Stone Skin is like level 3 or something. Because I think that they're both leveled spells.
If those are leveled spells, then when it comes down to cantrips, you could probably just go with Blade Ward.
Yeah, I agree. I think that these guys are specifically sturdy. They're the warrior group.
Yeah.
I think that because Blade Ward is resistance to non-magical piercing, bludgeoning, slashing.
It's basically like the basic types of damage, yeah.
I think that also the resistance cantrip is a contender. I think that one gives you plus a d4 to saving throws. So I think those are both reasonable contenders.
Blade Ward makes me think more of like just standard weapons though, which feels like it would be more applicable to just I have tough skin.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so, I'm happy with that.
So let's drop Blade Ward on them there.
Okay.
So they got their ability modifier at +1 to strength.
And they got their cantrip.
They've got their cantrip. They need one or two other things. Let's see. We were considering having them kind of maybe be a little bit spiky. Is there something we maybe want to do with that, or like the subtle development of the shell on their back?
So innate abilities, I think first off we gave, correct me if I'm wrong, sorry, we're getting it's late late here. We gave the subclass the proficiency, or did we give that to the race?
We gave that to the total race. The proficiency in survival.
So it was holding your breath and
swim speed. Yeah, totally.
So
there's also cultural questions about this as well. Like the dwarves, for example, like have proficiency in like certain types of tools, maybe certain types of weapons. Like these are something we could probably throw in there because they are the warrior class.
I think that that's a good idea. I think that if the base class has like the very, very typical like simple weaponry, that this is a very decent place to give things like proficiency to martial weapons.
Okay.
Where you start getting to the more serious weaponry.
Yeah, totally.
How do you feel about doing something like proficiency in saving throws?
Just all over the place? Because that's pretty powerful.
Something like a proficiency in strength saving throw. It's not advantage, it's just a solid plus your proficiency bonus.
It almost makes me want to tack on con again, because I don't see these guys as being particularly buff, I just see them as being tough.
Sure, I agree.
So maybe they could lean into these guys lean into the constitution aspect of this class.
Sounds good.
And so if you're gonna pick like a warrior version of them, like that's gonna be it. So maybe additional proficiency to constitution saving throws might be appropriate as well.
Sounds good. And then we're looking for probably one more thing for these guys.
So we didn't necessarily settle on martial weapons.
I'm happy with it. I'm just not entirely familiar with how weapon proficiencies are doled out again.
Yeah, fair enough.
That has slipped my mind.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe the ability to recover one hit die as an action?
I'm not upset about the idea of being sturdy like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's maybe an alright situation to say, like, just outright gain proficiency in, like, 2 different, like, weapon / like armor situations.
Okay.
Like, those are their trained tools of the fight. Because then if you choose your class and your whatever and you already have simple weaponry, you can take martial weaponry and shields or heavier armor or something like that.
I mean, we could even like nerf it a certain amount and just say 2
proficiencies.
Proficiency in 2 weapons of your choosing.
Yep.
I'm not sure if that kind of jives with the way D&D would want to work, but you can just say, this on top of my normal weapon proficiencies, I want to be good with rapiers and axes.
Yeah, I think that those are broken down into groups like simple, martial, finesse.
Something like
martial. That? Yeah, there's a handful of groups.
Okay.
But I think that gaining a couple of weapon proficiencies makes sense.
Okay. Should we just generalize it to martial weapons?
I'm happy with that.
Okay, let's go with that for now. But yeah, I think that makes them pretty powerful, I think. So let's just leave it at that. Okay. So last we got our Nectar Incense Magic Boys.
Our Mystic Lads.
So, ability score increase.
Ability score increase, my mind jumps immediately to something like Wisdom, potentially Intelligence.
It's the magic one.
Yeah.
Wisdom's the magic one, and I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, they're the wise lads.
Because I don't think they're not scientists, they're not alchemists, they're mystics. So wisdom is the obvious answer, I think. So yeah, let's rock wisdom on that. They have an increase to wisdom. It would be kind of nice to be a wizard one too, because it's like, oh cool, I get constitution and wisdom?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, that'd be a nice bonus. I think that their cantrip, my mind immediately goes to something like guidance or resistance.
Okay.
Guidance is also a bit of a hot topic. Some people love it. Well, everybody loves it, but some people also hate it because it's extremely helpful and extremely versatile.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're gonna get.
If you want to drop that on top.
Yeah. We might get a lot of heat for that.
Yeah.
I think that something like that, like bestowing a gift. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Guiding somebody is
not necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense to me. Very, very strong though, so that's why I say potentially or resistance, because that one is a whole lot less.
Yeah, what was resistance again?
That one's a D4 to saving throws instead of skill checks.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty good. And it would also kind of play into the whole Constitution theme of the whole set. So like their ability to add that to warriors or just anyone who needs it is probably a good idea. So let's tack resistance on there, but we wanted to do 2 cantrips in replacement of like their other stuff.
Yeah, or potentially being that these are again the magic ones, what if we gave them, instead of one of their boons, we gave them a leveled spell that they can use once per long rest.
Okay. I mean, we could also just drop proficiency in Arcana on top of them. So that's not out of the question either. But yeah, a single leveled spell wouldn't necessarily be.
I think there's a handful of races that get that. And that doesn't seem unfair as long as you keep it to a pretty low, like a low level spell, low impact spell. Even if it were something like Speak with Animals or a...
Goodberry?
A Goodberry is not a bad idea.
Because again, that kind of plays into their of the land a little bit.
Yeah.
Might not even have to necessarily be Goodberry itself. Like it could be, the spell could be Goodberry, but we can flavor it differently as well. That's a little bit of a healing thing. So yeah, if we add Goodberry, it won't be like overly impactful, but it'll be something you can kind of be glad when you do have it.
Yeah.
So they got two spells. They got their cantrip and their spell, and they got the ability increases. There anything else we do want to add to them, or is like 2 spells going to be a little powerful? I think.
Do you have anything that you can think of that is better for their specific niche than just outright giving them
magic stuff?
Yeah. Because that does provide less flexibility.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's kind of what the sub races are for, though, is like to kind of take something and then like put it into a niche. Yeah. So it's not the worst thing.
I think that it would be a pretty good place to give them like proficiency in like religion checks.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's necessarily so good that it is more important to get in there than having a spell, or something like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, now that I think about it, like yeah, we gave them Goodberry. What was his cantrip again?
Resistance.
The more I think about it, the more Speak with Animals actually makes more sense to me, because they are communing with the turtle.
Yep.
And so the idea of Speak with Animals probably actually lends itself more.
I think I like it more, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because, I was trying to think like, oh, they're the mystics, they're probably the healers, but yeah, maybe not.
So resistance?
Yeah, resistance.
Speak with Animals?
Speak with Animals. Arcana proficiency?
I think proficiency maybe in religion even more.
Okay.
Because that's, in my mind, kind of their role in the society is like the spiritual guys.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's kind of a good point.
Spiritual leaders.
And plus religion checks are also a little bit more specific.
Yeah,
but
they're a little
this
bit
is the
niche,
thing,
but...
is like that makes sense because their religion is going to be of the turtle. And I'm sure quite a few, like if you're actually playing in this world, quite a few of the things to do with the Leviathan, or at least your understanding, like people's understanding of the Leviathans, is probably going to be religion based.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. They're kind of the communers with the turtle rather than like any sort of specific healer or something like that. So that's a good idea.
And then they got their +1 in wisdom.
Yeah,
which I think makes them a pretty decent niche specific subrace.
Yeah, totally. Let's go with that.
Cool.
Well, all right, we have an idea of what we might want to do with the Kres'aa.
We got our Kres'aa, and we gave them 3 different subraces based on the 3 different kind of roles that they play in their society. We gave them a name, we gave them a style, we gave them all of the little information that you could need to make specific characters with them. And then how you flavor them is very much up to you, because there's going to be all kinds of variations in these people. Although I think that if you're going to choose specific traits to give them, to keep in mind that they're vaguely flavored in fish and reptile directions.
They're also very isolated from the rest of the world, so not understanding the customs of surrounding areas might be something that's kind of a character trait as well. As per D&D, everything is just going to be changed the way you want it to be. So when you become one of these, it's just going to be whatever you want. But yeah, for the sake of that, like, considering the fact that they probably haven't left the island, if they are an adventurer that is one of these, they're not going to be super familiar with the world outside of where they might have slightly visited at any other given time when the turtle gets close to land. We didn't really touch too much specifically on like the culture and how they might name themselves or languages and stuff like that, but I think it's probably going to be best if we save that for maybe next episode, and that's when we probably next episode, or maybe a future one, where we'll probably break down a little bit more of
how the society works,
and a little bit more specifics that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which might even lead to some changes in how we decided on this. But in the meantime, if you think this is overpowered, underpowered, needs to be more specific, less specific, let us know in the comments.
If you've got any different opinions on how you think that they should be flavored a little bit differently, let us know. And feel free to do that in your own game, but also drop them in the comments, and we'll have a look over your suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, if we agree with them enough, we might even just change them up, make it canon, and put it on a sheet for maybe everyone to enjoy. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a group effort here. Let us know what you think, and we'll go from there. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in.
See you at the end card. Hey there, welcome to the end card. If you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe, and if you want to end up on our next end card here, leave a comment down below. Or you can follow us on our Spotify or our Instagram. You can also slide in the Instagram DMs and leave a comment there, and we'll get back to you. At the end of this one, we're actually going to do a challenge time.
Challenge time! Challenges! Yeah, so as with the topic of the episode, I'm guessing you can guess that we're gonna have you make a D&D race, or even, you know, like if you play and or familiar with another tabletop, do something for that as well. Yeah, so make a race, or even if you have a setting and you don't want to make up something entirely new, try making a sub race for example, elves or dwarves or humans, or something like that. Included in the comments, because we'd love to see your unique takes on things. A lot of the challenge of trying to make a race is to try and not make them too powerful and cool.
Totally.
So
as much as we want our creations to be very, very strong or very, very cool, you have to unfortunately keep it level-headed and keep it in line with the rest of the stuff, which can be a shame. It can be hard. But it's only fair. But yeah, so for this challenge, try and think of the ways that their surroundings have impacted them in a specific way that they may not have impacted somebody else in a different place. So if you're talking about a sub-race of humans that has maybe lived isolated in a jungle somewhere, how would that have impacted them in a way that has sort of tangible results? Give us anything you got, but we're looking for things like, what would their modifiers be? What kinds of proficiencies do they have? How are they different than a standard other human or elf?
And why do they have dark vision?
Why do they have dark vision?
Because they always do, every time.
How old do they live?
Not 35,000 years old.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what we got for you this time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.